Wow. Damn. Everywhere I look, I see somebody who like made me possible. And so I'm not gonna do what black folk where I'm from do, which is thank every single person. Oh my God, hey. But I'm gonna thank some folks. First of all, I just wanna thank Strand for having us. We'll have to clap for them, but okay. Yep. I also wanna thank everybody in this room who allowed me, who allowed me to teach them and learn from them. At Vassar College, y'all kept me alive. You kept different parts of my imagination alive, and you allowed me to teach you. So thank you for that. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate y'all holding me down when I was trying to hold you down. And also, it's just so many creative forces up in this room. You know, like, y'all are, New York is serious. This is a big deal. And as far as this actual book, I really want to thank my agent, PJ Mark. Hey, over there, PJ. And I want to thank PJ for a number of things. One of the things I want to thank PJ for is connecting me to Kathy Belden, someone I've been wanting to work with and for years. I want to thank Nan Graham, the head of Scribner, who actually bought into this book in ways that I just never imagined anybody would outside of my region. I want to thank Rosie and Amanda, the publicists, who have gone out and told people about the book and made it happen. I want to thank Sally for reading early drafts of the book. And I just want to thank y'all for making space for me tonight. I'm going to read some stuff tonight. Mitchell, what's up, fam? Mitchell is like the illest because you look good in real life and on pictures. You know, like, you know, it's good to see you in real life, fam. Some people just do it one way, you know. All right, so because I feel so much love in this room, Sophia's in front of me, walking audacity with the leather brim. I want to read something that I haven't read on tour. Something that's really hard for me to read. It's very short. And then we can open it up for conversation. If y'all don't want to talk, I can read something else that's not as sort of emotionally volatile. But maybe we can just talk. All right, so I'm going to read a chapter from this book I wrote called Heavy, an American Memoir. And the chapter is called Wet. And I think all you really need to know is, I'm just going to read. And the book is directly addressed to my mother, so you are the you, as is my mom. All right, thank y'all so much. Wet. Key, I'm not going to tell you again, she said the next morning. We were sitting in the Nova in Beulah Buford's driveway. Get out of this car. I couldn't tell you why I didn't want to stay at Beulah Buford's house. You claimed you needed to do some organizing and research in Sunflower County for Jesse Jackson's presidential campaign. And you didn't want me at the house alone because someone broke in a few months earlier. I told you I knew you were lying, and I knew you were going to see Malachi Hunter. Kiese Laymon, I'm not going to tell you again. Get a grip and get your fat ass out of the car. I stood outside the Nova with my arms folded, covering my belly and my chest. You'd never called me fat. I didn't think you saw it. You better have that essay done when I pick you up too, you said. I'm tired of playing with you. From outside the door, I opened my wallet, got your old license out and tossed it through the window of the car. You threw the license back out of the passenger window and reversed out of the driveway. Layla didn't come back to Beulah Buford's house that Sunday, but Daryl, Delaney, and Wedge did. I asked Dougie what happened after I left the house. He said everyone ate hamburgers, drank 40s, and smoked weed until more girls came over. He said the girls who came over were older than Layla, and 2 of them had to go in Daryl's room with all the big boys, just like Layla did. Late that Sunday afternoon, I noticed almost all of us were in the pool except for Dougie. Sometimes when Dougie left, he'd just make everyone cheeseburgers, but he'd been gone for a while, so I got out of the pool too. I walked back to Dougie's bedroom. No one was there. I walked in the bathroom in the hall, but no one was there either. Down the hall a bit from his room, I saw Daryl's bedroom door cracked. I got close enough to the door to see Delaney was standing in the middle of the room with his soggy maroon swim trunks around his calves. Dougie was on his knees in front of Delaney with his hands behind his back. His tongue was out, licking the tip of Delaney's penis. As soon as they saw me, Delaney pulled up his swim trunks. Dougie dusted his hands off of his Pittsburgh Steelers shirt and walked right by me with his head down. I turned, walked down the hall, and got ready to fight or sprint out of Beulah Buford's front door. Delaney grabbed my arm and asked me to sit down in the living room. I sat on the stool in the front of Beulah Buford's piano, and Delaney sat next to me. He told me he would teach me to play chopsticks if I promised not to tell anyone what I saw. I sat with both fists balled up on my thighs. Part of me wanted Delaney to touch me again so I could try to kill him. But the biggest part of me was afraid Delaney might make me get on my knees, make me put my hands behind my back, make me lick the head of his penis until he said stop. I sat there watching those still piano keys and half listening to Delaney play and slowly talk his way through how he learned chopsticks. When he was done, Delaney stood up and looked down at me one more time. "Don't tell nobody, okay?" he said. "I'm serious. I was just playing with that boy. It was just a game. You hear me?" Grandmama always taught me to empty my pockets before I swung on somebody, so I went in both pockets, took out my wet wallet, and slammed your license down on the piano. Delaney looked at the ID. "That's your mama?" "She worked with my daddy." "Please don't say nothing to your mama. Your mama does not play. My daddy gonna fuck me up if he find out. I'm for real. That's just how me and D be playing. I'm for real." I followed Delaney out of Beulah Buford's front door and watched him sprint down the road like he was being chased until his wind got bad. That's when he started walking, looking behind him, and pointing at me like his fingers were guns. A few seconds later, Delaney was out of sight. I sat down in Beulah Buford's rocky driveway and started making thick-lipped smiley faces with the rocks. My head hurt. I didn't understand why Delaney thought teaching me chopsticks would make what he did okay, or why Dougie's hands were behind his back while he was on his knees. I didn't understand why Delaney seemed so happy to be with Dougie. A part of me didn't understand why the big boys wanted to be in rooms alone with Dougie and Layla and not me. A part of me knew it was because I was the fattest, sweatiest person in Beulah Buford's house. Ever since we were old enough to spend the night at our friend's house, we'd all play this game called Hide and Go Get It. One person had to count to 35 and the other people had to hide, usually in the dark closet or a hallway. We played with boys and girls, but in the dark of those hallways and closets, sometimes folks would touch each other in ways they never touch each other when the lights were on. I was too afraid to touch anyone, but not too afraid to want to be touched. My body didn't care if the person touching me was a boy or a girl. My body felt grateful for tender touch, no matter where it came from. Around the same time, girls and girls' bodies and girls' booties and girls' touch made me feel not just special, but sexier and more beautiful than boys' touch and boys' booties. I didn't know why, and I wasn't sure how to use words to explain it. I didn't know who would listen to me explain something so scary, even if I thought I'd found the words. I kept thinking you should have been the one I talked to about it all, since you were the one who taught me to read, taught me to write. But sexuality and bodies and feeling good and pain and tender touch and booties were something we never talked about. My body told different stories about you and Renata. Even though her touch was rough and yours was gentle, when either of you touched me, it all felt like love until it didn't. Then it felt like dying. Though I had no idea what was going through Layla and Dougie's heads and bodies as they walked in Daryl's bedroom, I wondered if they ever felt love while they were in there with the big boys. I know I would have. Every half an hour, I went back into Beulah Buford's and called Malachi Hunter's house looking for you. I hated that I could never forget Malachi's Hunter phone number and hated how I could trace the shape of every syllable on his answer machine. You have reached the home of Malachi J. Hunter, the alpha and omega of real estate agents in the New South. I am unavailable. Please leave a detailed message and I will return your call. Thank you. Malachi Hunter's favorite way to start sentences was, "that damn white man." According to Malachi Hunter, that damn white man's crowning feature was that he overestimated himself and underestimated the resolve of the, quote, revolutionary black man in Mississippi. There were no black women, white women, Mexican women in Malachi Hunter's political imagination. But once I understood that Malachi Hunter was the revolutionary black man in Mississippi to Malachi Hunter, and being the revolutionary black man in Mississippi meant carrying himself like he saw rich, radical white men carry themselves in Mississippi, I understood almost everything I needed to know about Malachi Hunter. You and Malachi Hunter didn't share the same political imaginations about black folk in Mississippi. You were more invested in organizing, teaching, grassroots political movements to help black folk in rural Mississippi exit poverty and shield ourselves from white folks' negligence. Malachi Hunter was much more invested in becoming a black Southern symbol of wealth and black power before he was 50. But when it came to kids, y'all were both invested and really obsessed with what y'all called redeeming value. Y'all didn't think black children should watch shows, listen to music, or read books with violence, nudity, adult situation, or cussing, because violence, nudity, adult situation, and cussing lacked redeeming value. "This key," I said into Malachi Hunter's answer machine. "Please come get me. You told me you would beat me if I went home, so I'm just waiting here in Beulah-Buford's driveway. Please come. Beulah-Buford house, it make my head hurt. It's real sad over here." An hour later, you pulled up. It didn't matter where I was, how late you were, or how angry we were with each other when you dropped me off. Nothing on earth felt as good as watching you pull up in our Nova to pick me up. "I love you," I told you as I got into the Nova. You didn't say anything. "I love you," I said again. Your right cheek was quivering. "You ain't hear me leaving the messages?" "Put your seatbelt on," you said in the most brittle voice I'd ever heard come out of your head. You just started making me wear my seatbelt a week earlier. I put the seatbelt on when a round, clear tear slid down your cheek. The tear slowed down and sped up past your top thin lip and slipped into the black corner of your mouth. I'd seen you cry when you talked to me about my grades and when you lied about having more money than you did, or when you created some strange lie about why my father hadn't sent child support. I put my left hand on the right fist you used to steer the Nova. "How come you ain't looking at me?" You stopped the Nova at the stop sign on the corner of Beasley and Hanging Moss. You slowly turned your face to mine. The white of your left eye was filled with a cloud of blood. The brown flesh around the eye was darker and puffed up, twice its normal size. When we got home, you knew what I was going to get. You pushed me away and rushed into your room. I watched you lift your pillow where you kept your gun. If I got to it first, you knew I would use it. Instead of going to my room, I got ice, napkins, a jar of pear preserves, a spoon, and our butcher knife. "You gotta be still, for real," I told you, wiping the dry blood off your face with thumbs wet from my saliva. "Have to be," you said. "Don't say gotta." "Gotta," I said. "Gotta. They gotta have fleas at Beulah-Buford house. The fleas over there, they gotta be the maddest fleas in the world, the way they be biting me all upside the head. Gotta." You laughed so hard and told me not to use the word be like that. I hoped you'd never stop laughing. "I don't want any pear preserves, Key," you told me. "Not now." "How come?" "They too sweet." When you finally put your arm around my neck, I felt all of your weight. "Hold me tight, Key," you said from our bed. "You're my best friend." "I'm sorry," you said as you fell asleep with the covers over the swollen, slick parts of your face. "I'm sorry for all of this." "You my best friend too," I told you. "My best friend ever." Lying next to you in that bed, I remember the first time you told me I was your best friend. I knew you kissed my cheeks because you loved me. I knew you asked me to hold you tighter because you loved me. You were so gentle. This is how we spent more than a year, and sometime in the morning in your room, sometimes in the morning in mine. Then you met Malachi Hunter. A few weeks later, you started to beat me for talking back and for way less than excellent grades. Sometimes you beat me upside the head, sometimes you beat me across the hand, sometimes you beat me as hard as you could in my mouth with belts, shoes, fists, clothes hangers. I remember you making me take my clothes off and lie across the same bed we slept in. I don't think I've ever screamed like that. You made me put my face down into the bed so I couldn't brace myself. As much as the lashes hurt, knowing you were beating me at 9 years old as hard as you could while looking at my fat, naked body hurt way more. The tearing of flesh hurt less than it should have, I think, though, because I knew you really did not want to hurt me. I know you did not want to hurt me because you sometimes touched me like you loved me. I wish you just could have chosen one kind of touch, even if it was beating me 10 times every day. That would have made everything a lot less confusing. You were still snoring when Malachi Hunter pulled his black Volvo into our driveway. You woke up when I tried to kill a revolutionary black man from Mississippi for hurting you that night. 2 hours later, you and Malachi Hunter took one glass of wine to your bedroom. From my bed, I heard long-tailed rats hiking through our walls, wet tires skating past our windows, and Johnny Carson's nasal monologue. I couldn't hear your voice, the only voice I wanted to hear when I woke up, the last voice I wanted to hear before going to sleep. I opened the bedroom door, walked down the hallway a few feet from my bedroom. Behind a locked door, Malachi Hunter said he was sorry for punching you in your face, sorry for making you bleed, sorry for fighting your son, sorry for punishing you for wanting to know the truth. You told Malachi Hunter you wanted a daughter, and you were sorry for running away. I went back to my room and I heard your bedroom door unlock and lock again. The many squeaks from your bed got louder. I got on my knees and prayed to God not to hear you wailing under the weight of the revolutionary black man from Mississippi. I hated my body. I walked in the kitchen, got the biggest spoon I could find, and dipped it halfway in the peanut butter and pear preserves Grandmama had given us. I heard the wailing all the way in the kitchen. I dipped the same spoon a quarter deep into Grandmama's pear preserves until the jar of peanut butter was gone. I did it again and again until the jar of peanut butter was all the way gone. The wailing did not stop. I hated my body. Before leaving the kitchen, I gulped down a few mason jars of boxed wine until I forgot the shape of the sound I was running from. When I was supposed to be finishing my report for you on Fannie Lou Hamer, I wrote instead about losing my 12-year-old heavy black body to an emergency I was too sad, too drunk, and really too terrified to identify. Early the next morning, I had my first wet dream. I was afraid to tell you what my body did while you were with Malachi Hunter because I knew you'd ask me why. Though I never wanted you to touch me again, I didn't want to lie to you. Lying to you felt like cheating. Cheating felt like something I never wanted to do to my best friend. That's it. All right. Y'all want to talk about stuff or y'all want me to read funny things? Hey, whatever I want to do. Anybody want to talk? Anybody want to say anything? Any questions? Fake questions? Speech questions? Yep.
I have so many questions.
Okay.
So after I read the book, I looked at the copyright page and realized that some of the characters were composites. And I thought that was really interesting, and I wanted you to speak on that. Did it, why did you make that decision, and did it affect your writing process in any way?
Yeah, so the question is, why were some of these characters composites? Because on the first page of the books, it says that some of the characters are composites, and it says something else. But, there's a long answer to that, but the short answer is we just didn't want to get sued. And it was a collaborative, the book was collaborative. I talked a lot with my mom and my grandmama along the way. And I talked a lot with other people involved. And the people involved in my memories didn't want their likeness in the book. You know, I wasn't going to try to force their likeness into the book. But, you know, for example, the book starts with my being at this person's house called Beulah Buford. Real life, that wasn't her name. In real life, there were 3 sons. To protect myself, protect some people involved, I made there be 1 son, 1 uncle, things like that. But that was done, I mean, you know, my editor's here, but that was done after like 12, 13 revisions, you know? So when I wrote this thing the first time, I had to write it all in the present, and I just tried to write it all as I remembered it, while talking to people. And some of the people I talked to were like, don't put us in the book. Some other people were like, if you put me in the book, make sure my shoes are fresh. You know what I'm saying? Like, that really happened. That really did happen. So, yeah, the composite question is just, some of it was for legal reasons, and some of it was just because I wanted to protect some of the people who asked to be protected. Yeah.
Hey. Good to see you.
You too. I'm just like amazed. I was listening to your work on like audiobook, and so it's just like nothing like hearing it aloud, like hearing you read. And so I was wondering, by locating the you so specifically, like the you as your mother, like how did that free you as a writer, or how did that like stop you as a writer? Like how did that that audience of one, like how did that?
Yeah. So the question was, how did writing to my mother specifically free me as a writer? Specifically because it was an audience of one. Again, you know, when I first wrote this project, I've been saying it, it's the truth. I was going to be a weight loss book. I was going to try to lose all this weight while talking to my mama, my grandmama, some other people close to me about their relationships to food, their relationships to sexual violence. And I started doing that project. And then at one point, the 4 sections were going to be broken up. One was going to be to my mom, one was going to be to my grandmother, one was going to be to my imaginary daughter, and one was going to be to a partner who I was very emotionally abusive to. And the hardest section to write out of all those by far was the section to my mom. And it was also the section that I thought was just like the strongest in terms of like rendering interpersonal relationships with like what I would call like national relationships. And part of that is because my mother was the person who made me read and write. You know what I mean? Like, so she was the first reader. She was my first teacher. And she's also the person I think that I share the most lies with. Like, we lied to each other every single day, multiple times a day for close to 40 years. So the hard-headed writer in me was like, I want to do that because it seems the hardest. But also I just thought that is the relationship that I'm going to need the most in order to want to wake up in the morning. And so that's why I decided to write to my mom. And also, the book is about my relationship with my mother. It's about addiction. It's about food. But it's also about American memoirs in general. And so I wanted to write. And I didn't want to, I understand the epistolary form, but I didn't want to write a letter to my mother. This is not a letter. I say that early in the book. This is a book written to my mother. So the center of this book that people around this country are reading is a black Southern woman from Forest, Mississippi. Like, she is the center. And if you can find you and her, that's cool. But if you can't, like, just know she's the center. And I just hadn't seen many memoirs that dared to do that. And I think America, we're obsessed with like black men having fathers or not having fathers. And so I understand the whole writing to your nephew, writing to your uncle, writing to your father, writing to your son thing. I respect those immensely. That's just not my experience, and that's not what I wanted to do. So in order to tell the truth and sort of free myself, I just had to write it to my mama. That's the honest answer. Hey.
So I was talking to a friend of mine who's a pretty avid reader. Yeah. And she asked me for recommendations specifically on black men who write about love, about romantic love. And yours was the only one I could think of. Like, your name was the only one I could think of, in that you topically address love, romantic love, familial love as a central theme in your work. But why do you think it is that there are few voices among black male bodies that address love?
Yeah, so the question was, why do I think there are few bodies, I think the word you used, right, that address love? I mean, that's a tough question. I appreciate you asking me that. I think sometimes, I don't know what that person meant by that question. I mean, because when I look here, you address love in your work, Robert addresses love in his work, Kyrie addresses love in their work. So, there are lots of different people who address love. Baldwin made a career out of thinking and talking about the messiness of love. Again, you know, I just got to a point in my life where I'm not trying to lapse into sentimentality either. I just wasn't at a good place in my life, like a lot of people. And I needed to feel heavier. And to feel heavier, I feel like I needed to talk to my mama and talk to you about love in order literally to go to sleep at night. And if I went to sleep, in order to want to wake up in the morning, I needed to connect to people who were out in this world failing and trying to love with the art that my mama gave me. And so I did it, one, because literally I wanted to try something that I had not done, but I also did it because there's a tradition that comes before me. But just more than anything else, I just did it, fam, because I just really wanted to get up in the morning. Like, I got to a place in my life, and I talk about it in the book, you know, when at one point I was like 150 some pounds, which is that's not a lot for somebody like me. And I had like 2-3% body fat, and I could do things with my body that I couldn't do before, but I also was doing things with my body that I couldn't do before. So I was harming myself tremendously. Then I gained a ton of weight, and I started to harm myself tremendously. And I just really wanted to write a book to the nation and to my mama about like a different kind of love. Do you know what I'm saying? Like a different kind of love. And so like that line, for some of us, that very thin line between love and not just pain, but love and death is, I think a lot of us in this room, we know that line really well. You know what I'm saying? And so we often talk about abuse, but we don't talk about the others. And often we talk about the abusers. But one of the reasons like the abusive parts of us are so successful is because on the other side of that is somebody who actually loves, whether they should or not, they do. And so I wanted to write a book about like how I've been on both sides of that line, how I've looked at people who I knew had my back, who I knew would fight and die for me in a second. And I just said, fuck it. Fuck you and fuck it. And I've also been on that side of the line where I'm looking at different people in my life, including my mom, where I'm like, can you just reach out and touch me and just tell me that I'm gonna be all right? And sometimes that didn't happen, you know? So because I'm a writer, I just wanted to try something that I needed to do, but also something that I hadn't seen a lot of like in the last 2 years in book form. But I think we do see it a lot, I would argue, in essay form and in a lot of poems. Hey. So good to see you. It's Cuzzo right here, yeah.
Visual. I wanted to ask you about aspiration because, you know, this book is written about your mom as she is trying to achieve her dreams, and you're a view of you first, but you also get the positive remnants of that with your reading and writing and revising. And I was the type who went on a, date with my husband to see A Wrinkle in Time, and I walked out stressed out, like thinking, you're not supposed to go figure out the quantum physics of the universe, but your child thinks you abandoned them. Yeah. And I'm wondering for you, as you talk about this imaginary daughter you were going to write to, and the aspirations of, leaving Mississippi and then coming back home. Can you talk about those voids that both shape you, but also, in both positive and negative ways, and what it means for you moving forward as you're obviously aspiring star?
That's a great question, Carla. And like the scary part of that question, the question is about aspiration. And the honest to God truth is that like, I think I'm at a healthier place in my life than when I started this book. But the two things that I aspire to most are like to create sentences nobody's ever seen and figure out a way to like make my grandmama last forever. Like that's it. But that's not healthy. There's a lot of other shit out there I should be aspiring to. I should be aspiring to be a better friend, a better partner. You know what I'm saying? Like I should be aspiring to have a better relationship with Shane. And so right now, honestly, like I need to be able to have a bigger breadth of aspiration. For the longest, I thought I need to go home. I was up in New York, up in Poughkeepsie for 14 years. If I go home, I was like, and I did. I had to go home, I think, to finish this project and be with my grandmama. But, Kathy, my editor, always asked me, like, where do you want to be in the country, in the world? Like, what do you want to do? And I'll never have an answer to that shit. I'm always like, water, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, remotely committed people who got my back, but those aren't real answers because I haven't allowed myself to have aspirations outside of writing and outside of my grandmama. And I think I'm doing okay with those two. But the problem is it's like there's a lot more shit I need to be aspiring to. You know what I mean? So I don't know. One thing I had not aspired to, and this is also what I'm talking about in this book, is like, you know, when my mom and my grandmama, when I talk to them now, they're always like, where are our grandkids at? You know, when are you going to have a daughter? When are you going to have a child? When are you going to have some blah, blah. And I just, for different reasons, you know, I think partially because of the way my parents parented and because of what I saw, I just never aspired to have a child. And yeah, that's probably too personal. So I'm working on all of that. Yeah, I'm working on all of that. Y'all want to talk about anything else? Hey.
So digging into the reliving a lot of the memories, did that ever seem like too big of a task to overcome? How did you do that?
Right. So the question was, did reliving some of the memories seem like too hard of a task to overcome? Right. Yeah, it's too hard of a task, you know, but I just think it's all, I don't believe in like equations, but I think I do. Do you know what I mean? Like, and so in my mind, my mother, you know, the same writerly practice she put in me as a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 15-year-old is the same writerly practice I have now. It's an obsessive writerly practice. It like that practice when applied to food can lead to harm, right? That practice when applied to love can lead to harm. But when applied to writing, I was like, that's the only, like that sort of obsessive practice is like, oh, all good. But it's really not. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so I spent like 3 years of this book just like writing that shit. Like I wrote 2 or 3 hours in the morning, 2 or 3 hours at night, and just writing into the things that I thought I wanted to lie to myself about, or writing into memory. Like just directly. And I hurt myself by doing that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I teach my kids they need to write every day, but I just learned that like writing every day means sometimes I just need to see what I can do with the word of. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes I just need to see what the fuck I can do with like semicolons. Do you know? Sometimes I need to be like, I have never eaten, I don't eat meat, right? So sometimes I'm like, I'm just gonna try to describe what meat might taste like. Like that's writing too. And that's one way to protect yourself if you're someone like me who thinks you have to go hard all the fucking time. And so I always wanna tell young writers or writers, whatever age you are, you gotta be kind to yourself in this practice. You can't every fucking day sit in what people call trauma and think you're not gonna be fucked up. You're gonna be fucked up, right? You're gonna be fucked up. But what you can do is you can sharpen that tool by trying to do something else, which can enable you to go into what some people call trauma, and then you can find like the slivers of comedy. So when I wrote about this book, and I wrote about different relationships I had with people when I was a kid that were sexually violent, the first time I wrote it, I wrote about what happened to my body, what I saw, what I smelled, sorta, but I didn't write about what I tasted, right? So the first time that this woman did some stuff to my body when I was 9, she was 21, you know, she did some stuff to my nose, she put her breast in my mouth, she played with my penis and whatnot. Hard stuff to write about. But I also wrote about like being scared as fuck that she was gonna think my breath smelled like fucking pork chops, rice, and gravy, because that's what we had to eat, right? So as a writer, I wanna be like, that's what I remember. Now challenge readers to like laugh and or turn away, but you're gonna have to do something with your body when reading those scenes. But I couldn't even get there until I had to change my practice up, you know what I'm saying, and realize like writing every day into what that harmful shit is not some good stuff might come from it, but I don't think in the long run it's sustainable. I don't think so. Hey.
Hey. Thank you for loving us and creating this with us and for us. So as you can probably anticipate, I want to ask you a little bit about political imagination, which you were talking about, and what you read to us, and the ways that violence, you know, that we experience structurally and interpersonally, and the ways we enact it shapes our political imagination. I just wonder if you can talk a little bit about how we can forge a political imagination, I guess not untouched by that, because we're all touched and broken and breaking by it, but where we can go from there that's not sort of limited by that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you would be a much better person to talk about that than me, like by far. Like literally, your book made me think about political imagination in different ways. But since you asked me, I'm gonna give my reductive answer. Okay. So I grew up in a city called Jackson, and my mother was 19 when she had me, so I used to go back and forth between my mother and my grandmother. And my grandmother was quasi-politically oriented woman. And I say quasi because she had no trust in white people. She worked for white people at the chicken plant. She worked for white people cleaning houses. She worked for white people, like washing their clothes. But one of the things that I realized writing this book was that, and then my mother became a political scientist, and between the mid 80s and like the late 90s, my mother just had a role in almost everything sort of progressively political to happen in Jackson, Mississippi. And the short answer to that question is we made what people call progress without ever being honest about the extent of the violence and or the extent of the love, the extent of like the interpersonal violence and the extent of like the structural violence. Meaning that, my mama and my grandmama, like a lot of black women in the South, were in relationships with race men who were like leading the march, leading the charge. Those race men never talked about love and never talked about abuse, right? And what I'm trying to argue in this book, maybe subtextually, is that like we kind of got a chance if we don't talk about and honestly reckon with our relationships to violence and abuse. But if we don't make ourselves heavier with those sort of conversations, I just think like our punchback, our kickback, like withstanding what the fuck these people do to us is impossible. Right? And that sounds sort of corny because it's all, at the end of the day, it's all about a particular kind of imagination, a particular kind of communicative like interaction. I mean, some might even call it a transaction, but I just believe political imaginations that lack rigorous investments and explorations of love and intimacy are ultimately progress narratives that are bound to fail. And I learned that from your book too. Do you know? And so, but that's where we are in this nation. Like, the We Shall Overcomes and all that kind of shit. Thank God they wrote that, but like we have no chance of overcoming until we talk honestly and lovingly about like who we are, what made us, how we've harmed. Because as we see, they always swing back, and they always swing back in sort of predictable ways. And when they swing back, we initially like disintegrate and then we come back. But part of the reason I think we disintegrate is because we haven't reckoned with heteropatriarchy. We haven't reckoned with transphobia. We haven't reckoned with the violence that like is part of us. So I'm not trying to do that thing where I'm like, oh, we gotta, it's all about us, it's not them. It's about us fucking them up when they fuck us up. But we have no chance if we don't do what hasn't been modeled for us. And that's the scary thing. Because I think what your book taught me is that it has been modeled for us if we go back and back and back. So that's my answer to that. So maybe one or two more. Hey. Well,
I was like just sort of going off that. I just was thinking like when you write, like I don't want to write a lie.
Yeah.
Like and this is part of or most of the reason, right? Like
right.
To your mom. Like
right.
How did you have the courage to go all the way there? Doing what you're talking about.
I didn't go all the way there. So the question was how did I have the courage to go all the way there? And you put a book out like this, I think the world, even when they say they like it, they can do that thing where they like exceptionalize you and exceptionalize your relationship with your parent. But I taught at Vassar too long to know, like, parents be fucking people up. You know what I'm saying? And the other part that we don't want to is we be fucking parents up. So is this the book that I needed to write? Like I got close to writing it, but I didn't. And it's not just about like I didn't tell everybody what really happened in my house. Like part of that is true, but also I just think at this part in my life I accept that I'm a writer. Like my mama made a writer, which means my next books are gonna be better, which means my next books will hopefully be more not self-righteous but honest. And so like, I'm proud of what I did with this project, but like when I look at this project, for example, And I look at the fact that, like, where I'm from, the assault on indigeneity is like so fucking real, right? Like indigenous sovereignty is a real thing in Mississippi and all over this country. You read this book, you don't know that shit at all. Like, you read this book, you would think indigenous folks do not exist. You would be like, indigenous sovereignty, what the fuck is that? So I don't need to just be like, oh, that's something I didn't do. That's something that, like, I was not capable of doing, but also I didn't have the courage to try. And so I'm saying all this to say, I wrote this book so I could be better than my mama and them. My mama and them grew up in an era where they cannot talk about failure for fear what white supremacy and anti-blackness, heteropatriarchy are gonna do to them. For all reasons, good and big, I'm cool telling white folk, and more importantly, telling my folk how I fail, because I feel like they can't do much more to us. But that's a gift that my mom and them gave me. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So like, there are lots of things in this book that need to be better, and there are lots more like honest craft things that need to happen. But I have faith that if I live to write another book, I'll get better at it. Yeah, maybe two more questions. Okay.
Hi, I just wanted to know. You talk about loving yourself through the process as a writer. How do you wade through this heavy material and practice self-love at the same time?
Yeah, so the question was, how do I wade through this heavy material and craft self-love at the same time? Or practice it. So for me, again, for me, I mean, I don't know, yo. I just accepted like a few years ago that I'm a writer. So like, wading through the material with integrity and love is that work. Do you know? And I don't, for the first time in my life, I don't, and this is one of the reasons I'm so thankful for my agent and my editor. Like, I don't feel like I gotta get this shit right the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, seventh time. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think a lot of us in this room get the chance to revise in life. Like, we get punished immediately if we even gesture toward failure. And a lot of us in this room pay the price for that. But in this project, because of what I did, I think, with my other projects, I think in this fucked up way, I bought myself some time to fail. And I think that sort of buying allowed me to create a book that is not like the perfect book I wanted to write, but it's closer than I ever thought I could get. So, all right, maybe one more question. Hey.
He's curious about the title wet. And the reason that I'm even asking is when you announced you were going to read from a chapter called Wet, I didn't know, I haven't read the book, so I don't know much about it.
Right.
And all of a sudden, knowing that it was related to your childhood, I kept thinking of wet in the sense of a baby in the amniotic fluid.
Right.
And I'm just wondering if you could talk about that word, because you also mentioned something that's talking about the word of.
Yes.
So what did wet mean to you?
What did wet mean to me? Yeah, that's a great question. What did wet mean to me? So, as I said earlier, I'm just sort of obsessed with not words as much as sentences. Like, obsessed. I'm obsessed with sentences and paragraphs. And of course, when you name a chapter like this wet, and it's sort of about mother-child relationships, you want there to be the connotative, like, amniotic sac and fluid and all of that. But also, I just wanted I wanted people in my readers, like my people, to understand like what actually is in that wetness, right? Like, so it's the wetness from my mama putting her hands in her mouth and wiping the sleep out of my eyes. It's like in this moment, my mama's eye is bleeding, and so I have to go in my mouth and like wipe it from her. It's about like the wetness of pear preserves. You know what I mean? It literally, we move and move and move until it becomes about the wetness of like puberty, right? Like, I literally had my wet dream the first time I heard my mom, not the first time, but the first time I heard my mom having sex with her boyfriend after he punched her in her face. I didn't know what to do with that wetness, but I think wetness is like more always. That's the thing about wetness. That's the thing about liquid. It's so much more than like tactile physical, right? It connotes, it invites, and it speaks to a particular kind of intimacy. And so this chapter for me is one of the scariest chapters in this book. And so I just wanted to name it what it is. Like our relationship, my relationship with my mom is like a loving, hardcore, sometimes traumatic, oftentimes joyful, hyper wet relationship. I'm saying this shit to you now, sweat coming down my face, you know? I just don't think we need to run away from that. This goes back to that question. But I think that we do. I think we run away from the wetness, or we fetishize the wetness. And I'm just saying, what happens if we actually sit in the wetness, talk about the wetness, talk about what happens when the wetness dries up? I just think we have to if we're gonna fight back, not just in our families, but also as folk, you know what I'm saying, as people. So for me, being from Mississippi, like wetness is it, and heaviness is too, but wetness is definitely it. All right, y'all. One more question for Sophia, because she's Sophia. Yeah.
I know you're never supposed to ask the DJ, request songs from the DJ, but I'm going to do that right now.
Okay.
Please tell me that the next chapter you can read, the next section is about Quick Feet.
Tonight? Oh, I would love to read Quick Feet, but
Okay.
Well,
just everybody make sure you read that because it's fucking weird.
Yeah, I love Quick Feet chapter because that's my grandmama at her. That's what she quick feet, quick foots. That's what she says. I don't think I got time for that because I gotta get back on. I gotta get on the train, you know. But y'all should read this chapter. And it's not called Quick Feet. It's called B. It's called B, but it ends with Quick Feet. And the short version is that, short version is I went to the house to my grandmother, clean these white people's homes and wash their dirty clothes and whatnot. And some bad things happened at the house when I was there. We took the clothes basket back to the house. I got really upset, and I fucking put their clothes in the middle of the kitchen, and I started doing like football drills. You know, football drills, quick feet, doing the quick feet. And then my grandmother, who was trying to divert me from talking about what I wanted to talk about, started talking about, you know, Key, what were you doing to those clothes? Were you doing the quick feet? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, quick foots, quick feet. So there we go. That's a summarized version. Anyway, thank y'all so much for coming out tonight.